A new year means New Year's resolutions, of course, and a popular one is eating healthier simply by getting in better shape. But while taking on a new fitness routine comes with its benefits, you can also run the risk of burning out soon, just like we said. WGEM's Dylan Smith has more on how easing into a healthy new year can turn a resolution into a success.
Whether it's adding a few more steps to your day or something a little more intense, knowing when to take a breather can be the difference between progress or injury.
You should always listen to your body. If something hurts, it's probably a warning sign. It's a red flag.
Tim Piper is the coordinator of sports medicine and rehabilitation for McDonough District Hospital. When he first trains a client, he starts with the basics, beginning gradually and not overloading.
We always try and gradually progress, but we try to make sure that the level you're working at is hard enough to actually make it feel like you're making progress and it's challenging, but at the same time not causing any overdue stress or strain.
Data from the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission shows gym-related injury hospital visits go up by more than 20% in January. Strains and sprains account for a bulk of the reasons. Piper says soreness is expected when starting a new routine, but there are ways to work around it.
What I do if people have soreness is typically modify the range of motion, modify the intensity, so we still do the same motions, and that tends to sometimes make it feel better anyway, and you kind of work through that, and it helps relieve some of that soreness.
Working through pain, though, Piper says is a bad idea. He recommends starting a routine you can manage and something that's fun. Setting unrealistic goals right off the bat can lead to dropping that routine altogether.
If you don't enjoy the exercise program you're on or the type of exercise you're doing, it's not going to last probably.
Dylan Smith, WGEM News.
Well, if you are feeling sore, Piper says a good way to boost recovery is to try and stay active rather than staying still for too long during the day.